Police in riot gear firing tear gas and rubber bullets against protesters, a scene straight out of a foreign war zone, but as we've seen this past week, it is the heartland of America. How did local police forces become so militarized in the first place? Joining me now to talk about foreign policy and what's happening in Ferguson is former Republican presidential candidate and Texas Republican Congressman Ron Paul. Thank you very much for being with us. I know this militarization of our police forces, which we saw for the first time really graphically on Wednesday night in Ferguson, was a congressional program. It was increased after 9/11. What do you think needs to be done, and do you think Congress will ever take a harder look at this? Because there are bipartisan proposals to end this program of surplus equipment being turned over to local forces.
Well, let's hope so. When this program came into effect, I was strongly opposed to it and tried to slow it up. And it takes a long time to change a program. Once it's established, the Congress moves very slowly, but it should be gotten rid of. The founders didn't want a national police force, but they're very much involved in national policing activities. I mean, the various agencies from the FBI on down. But to militarize them and give them military weapons, it creates a culture, guns and tanks and gases that are illegal in wartime are being used. So it is an atmosphere which just sort of encourages the police to overreact, and it's very, very dangerous. Police are supposed to be local people, and they're supposed to be peace officers. They're not supposed to be warriors.
And now we've got the National Guard going in, but are they justified given the violence that erupted from some people who are not the protesters but are looters, let's say, trying to take advantage of the situation?
Yeah, that's always a tough one, but even the National Guard is a military operation, so I don't like the military to be moved in. But it should be a police activity, but we're seeing the consequences of so many mistakes. Then the question is, how do you handle this? Because if you get rid of the militarization, it takes a while to do that. But I think the less military, the better, because the police became militarized. I can't see how bringing soldiers in are a very good substitute for the police. Maybe the state police or something like that, but not the Guard unit, which has been taken over by the federal government. They're not as independent as they may sound. The federal government uses the military, overseas at will, whether it's the Guard or the reserve units. They go overseas at the president's command. So I don't think that's the solution.
Let me ask you about military engagement overseas, because the president last night, the White House sent a war powers, a notification to Congress under the war powers resolution about what's happening in Iraq. It does seem that the mission now to try to retake the dam in Mosul is not the same mission as the humanitarian, quote unquote, mission to save the Yazidis on top of Mount Sinjar. So are we risking mission creep, or should we be fighting against against ISIS in Iraq?
No, we're not. We're not risking it. We're doing it. This is exactly the way the war started 24 years ago. As we used planes and bombs and started, attacking Iraq. So it continues. So no, it's the wrong thing to do. Just think if we had developed a non-interventionist foreign policy in 1990, there would have been no deaths in Iraq. And it wouldn't be a perfect country, but it wouldn't be total chaos with it being every bit as bad or much worse than it was in 1990. So I would say that if that policy would have worked, and a lot of people are coming around to agreeing that it was a bad mistake going in. If that was a bad mistake to go in, why is it a bad mistake to go home? That's my argument. Why is always sticking around and excuses? The military actually had not left. They were just going in there now to protect the military as much as anything else. We certainly weren't going in there to protect refugees on a mountain. I mean, that was just an excuse to escalate. So we don't have a precise foreign policy. I think Obama wants to lean in that direction. He's less militant, so I sort of like that, but it's not precise enough. enough because he gets it from both ends. Some people like myself who want non-interventions, we say, well, he's doing too much. But then when it comes to the neocons, they come down hard on the president and say, no, we need to have troops in there, we need bombs, and we need to be much more aggressive. And the only reason that this has happened is we took the troops out. And of course, the war ended, so to speak, and the troops were brought home by directives of President Bush. So they won't admit that.
Well, let me ask you a quick question. We only have a few seconds left about Texas politics. What is this indictment of Rick Perry? Now, a federal judge has said today he's not going to issue an arrest warrant for the governor. A lot of people are saying it is just politics. Is this a bad indictment?
Yes, it is, and I don't generally defend our governor very much. He has a fairly good grasp on economics, but when it comes to civil liberties and foreign policy, he's a disaster, so I don't promote him. But this is pure politics. I'll tell you, this is really a joke. If he doesn't come out of here ahead of the game, because when you look into this and how this came about, I mean, it really becomes a joke. So in this case, I would say the abuse of power comes more from the DA's office than from the governor's office in this case.
Ron Paul, thank you very much. Thanks for being with us,
You're
Congressman.
welcome.